Do it, Zach.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the first podcast. This is Expanded Understanding. This is Aaron, and I am Zach, and we are your standard hosts. We will normally have guests on here and a lot of interaction with the community, but for tonight, we'll be starting with just us, and we're going to talk about astral energies and ways that we interface with those inside of our life. Both Aaron and myself have a vast range of experience of different ways of interfacing with these things. And we're happy to take any questions that you have if you're here with us live, or we will just kind of dive into our own experiences. So first and foremost, Aaron, what I would like to ask you is, as far as like these energies go, what do you feel is the primary way that you experience those? Like, how do you feel those most commonly in your life?
Yeah, okay. So this is interesting too, because I wonder if this is what an empathetic or empathic dynamic is like, because most of my dynamics growing up have been very intuitive, right? Or sensations in the body, then with visual imagery in my own mind's eye, right? My own imagination. But having, I think being able to go several years ago, really making a major breakthrough in the thing we were talking about the other night. So somebody who in the Christian paradigm who saw angels and was working with angels all the time and listened to interviews with him and different dynamics, and the dynamics made sense, the actual like fascinating dynamics with angels beyond just, you know, maybe the cliche stuff people have heard about and a lot of those interactions. And I remember the interviewer asking him, so is this for the sake of the people listening, is this in your mind's eye, or are you actually like seeing these things? Because you talk about them, you know, and the angels here, and we talked and we did this and we did that, and like, and his immediate response was not offended at all, like not in that way, but it just was like really a deep response that really struck me was, does it matter?
Sure, right.
You know, like, does it matter? Because if you know that you know something is there on the other side and you're communicating with, does it matter if you can see it? If you know and can feel in your body, you can hear a different frequency or different voice inside of your own soul or in your mind or in your, you know, whatever, then does it matter if you can't see it?
Yeah, if you're experiencing it, is it part of your experience or is it not? Right?
Yeah, as opposed to seeing it necessarily being the crutch, but are you experiencing it or not, or how are you experiencing it?
Sure.
Yeah, so I think everything, the more so there's just been layers like throughout life as the more I began to understand, like, one, how real my imagination is, right? You're creating your reality, that even with things in life that we visualize it even though we don't realize it, you know, you visualize everything, and we just, you know, create a picture in our minds that we then draw energy from or draws energy from us, you know.
Sure.
So
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
So as far as that goes, like, given, you know, right now the world's in a very interesting place, and I think a lot of people are experiencing energies that are, we could just say, confusing at the least. Like, they maybe don't know what to make of it, or it feels like a lot, or it feels very different. And so when we're in a position like that, how do you feel that this imagination, or the ability to kind of put what we're feeling into our mind's eye, how does that play into our life?
Okay, so I guess in the same way you're asking, just how do you deal with the craziness going on and stay centered also? And just connecting it to the last thing I was saying. We were asking, I'm assuming.
Sure, broadly, I think we do want to get to, like, how do you deal with that? But more conceptually speaking, do you think how important do you feel it is that, like, our perception, what we're sculpting in our mind's eye based off of the energies that we're feeling, how much do you feel that influences how our life goes?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I don't know. So it's interesting because I'm sure people envision things differently or they experience things differently. But I know, like, okay, so for me, the more viscerally sensory, if that makes sense, it is, the more meaningful it is to, like, my own physiology, to my own chemical release for positive, you know, endorphins and serotonin, whatever, and all the things that happen when you do practices like the Taoist practice of the inward smile, right? That you're smiling at every one of your organs, and you're visualizing that, smiling at your heart, and that love and that smile, but you're visualizing it also, but it's a feeling, because the smile, you know, I mean, you can't really, it's hard to, it can be weird to visualize your face going in and smiling at your organs, right? But it's more the feeling that like appreciation and gratitude.
Yeah, kind of projecting that feeling of appreciation that you give with a smile in towards that visualization of that organ, right?
Yeah, which is interesting because if I think
is that something that you've practiced a lot?
Oh, dude, one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. This was several years ago, and I remember I was at home and I was going into this meditation. I think I was so I was taking Adderall at the time, and I was because of my borderline narcolepsy disorder, and I would take it before I go take a nap. So I'd time it so it'd kick in as I'm coming out of a nap, so it'd just be a nice
Hmm.
gradual transition. And I found
Sure.
a lot of times as I'm waking up, I just stay in the in between place and just my eyes closed and beautiful. I'd have music playing or something, or be going into my own visualizations. I just stay in that place, right? And I think I was at the time I was sitting on a one of the acupuncture, mats, that like all
Hmm.
over, and just some other little things I was doing. But I started doing that practice specifically, and I remember, I mean, totally sober, um, before any entheogen experiences or any of that stuff. It was the most like viscerally profound and beautiful, full, like every sense or organ or sensory perception thing I could possibly have, I was experiencing while I was going through that practice, and it lasted like minutes,
So
you
you're
know?
just saying it was like a very, very heavy sensory experience?
Right, but of the smiling at my organs, what I felt like was it
Right.
was like every smile I've ever smiled in any life I've ever existed on was amplified in that moment to like throughout my whole vessel, like over
Hmm.
and over in waves. But it was from me choosing to smile at my organs, if you will. It wasn't like some
Sure.
random outside thing or whatever. It was
Right. Yeah.
massively internal
Just
and
a
amazing.
practice of self-appreciation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was
So
like
do
that's
do
one.
you feel that like a practice of self-appreciation in any way like kind of even separates you from someone who may have a perspective that some type of energy is coming from outside? Maybe they call it like God, or maybe they call it universe, or whatever it is that they call it. But do you feel that there's kind of an overlay between what there is outside and what we're really just choosing to do inside? Are those the same thing? Are those different things? How do you feel about that?
Um, yeah. So I think so. It's all centered, right? So if you're centered in you, then whatever situation you encounter, you can encounter. You can actually
Sure.
deal with and process it and make a decision about it.
Uh-huh.
And so if we know there's a separation between our nervous system and our soul, if you will, your nervous system's going to react. If something comes out, you might, piss your pants a little bit or whatever. Your nervous system might react, but if, at a core level, knowing more of who you are and being more seated in life and in this body and whatever it is that you're doing, then that is able to come forward, and then you can calm yourself and actually make decisions instead of reacting. Then you can choose to respond. I think that's probably the primary difference in those two. And then self-appreciation, I think it's all a part of it, but just knowing who you are in any situation, that you're going to be able to handle any situation.
Sure. Yeah. When you say that you're going to be able to handle any situation, do you feel how do you feel that a person comes about having that feeling that they can handle any situation? Is it about collecting tools? Is it about trusting? What is it that allows a person to feel like they can handle any situation to you?
Well, let me ask you that question. You answer that. What do you think?
Well, I think, I mean, I personally think it comes from definitely a little bit of both. Like you may have a lot of tools, but if you don't have the ability to trust your tools, then you may not feel like you have enough tools. And then you don't have that confidence in the situation. I think if you want to have so you kind of have like an illogical and a logical side to it. Illogically, you need to trust the tools that you have are going to be capable of doing their jobs. Logically, you need to have enough tools to be able to do the jobs. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I can believe in my own work ethic to dig a hole, but I'm actually conceptualizing something completely different if I have a shovel or a backhoe, or I'm going to use just my own hands. It's completely different things. I may choose to extend the trust that if I decide there's a hole that needs to be dug, I'm going to get it done regardless of the tools I have. But if I have a backhoe and I need a 6 foot deep hole, like that's easy. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think we definitely do need both of them in order to sculpt that confidence. I think this is why it's really important to really like step into our fears a lot of time, or like if you do fear something, step into it without fear. It's really kind of more how I would put it. Really, just because what you're going after is the novel experience. I think a lot of times we fear the novel experience. And I think carrying over into astral energies, a lot of the times we fear novel energies and we experience that fear in a way that feels like maybe oppression, or it feels heavy or overwhelming, or that we got disempowered in some way. Really, what if we're going fear and we're going fear love duality, this is functioning like a fear response. and maybe we're having a fear response to a new energy that we're just not really used to. And if we're really trying to expand ourselves or unify, to bring things together into coherence as one, world peace is the idea of bringing everybody into coherence as one. So functionally, on really every dimensionality, most people, at least some level, posture that they're seeking this. So if we're trying to bring that all together, then we have to not avoid the fear response because it tries to hold the thing away. We have to try and bring it together to a more loving response, which means we have to engage the novel thing and go past that fear. But when we have something new coming in, because there's unknown, we may feel like we do not have the tools, or we are not capable of trusting the tools that we have, and thus we choose to avoid that novelty or respond to that novelty in some way that justifies our avoidance, which is functionally a fear response. So that kind of took a tangent but circled back.
No, it's good. So like the tools dynamic. So I think there comes we're always putting tools in our toolbox, right? There's always different
Mhm.
ways. Like I love different. I've gotten different resins for burning incense. They all have a different smell, and when I tune into that, when I'm just present with
Sure.
it, I can feel it affecting my physiology in different ways, and like stimulating different even epigenetic memories and expressions. So
Hmm. Hmm.
they all have nuanced applications, but a lot of that, the point is, what is it doing inside of you, not just in the environment around you? Because they know sage smoke clears, it's antibacterial, antiviral, and so if there's a
Right.
link between bacteria and astral parasites and other entities, it makes sense then why it would not only actually clean your physical environment, but also clean the etherical environment, right?
Sure.
But then also, what does it do inside of you? For example, I know sage externally, what it does in the environment. Sage for me personally, that smell is really, really potent, right? It's not bad, but it's just intense. Just the smell, not the way it's being done is overwhelming, just the smell.
Sure.
But I
Sure.
like a lot of other ones. Anyway, so there's tremendous amounts of tools, even psychological tools, like when you face certain things and asking things questions 3 times to verify their authenticity or the legitimacy in different realms, and even in your own conversations in your own mind or meditations. Um, but
What do you mean by asking questions 3 times for
So,
this?
like, I think you mentioned it the other night too. We were talking about well, I had a friend, okay, share with me. So in dreams, for example, if someone comes that you think you know, or a celebrity or whatever, you can ask them who they are 3 times. And after 3 times, they either that's who they are, or they have to drop the veil and see who it is. And it's not even necessarily nefarious, but
Hmm.
it's another aspect of your subconscious, or maybe it's some other entities or other dynamics going on, but
Sure.
it's asking 3 times a tool to help be able to assess your environment, right? More
Sure.
accurately. Tool that helps you refine the accuracy of what you're perceiving or experiencing. And so I think though, when we get to a place of, you can call it sovereignty, that you know that no matter what situation you encounter, you're the tool maker. So you may not have a tool,
Sure.
but you'll find one and you'll make one. You know?
That brings up a whole nother side to it. Like, do you need tools and do you need trust if you just trust that you can get the tools whenever you need them?
Yeah, good question. And I think that's true ultimately. That you don't all you need is self, all you need is you really internally in the moments. And then obviously we're interdependent. This isn't about isolation, and it's also not about melding into random oneness and not dealing with our issues and melding into bliss. Like it's everything
It
in
can kind
between.
of
But
feel like it's about isolation right now.
yeah, no doubt, huh? Yeah, especially without the physical contact or physical being around a lot of people. Yeah, it's
Right.
an interesting dynamic. So it's interesting in that way too, because we were talking about this. So being isolated, so having conversations where I've had several with several different people over different dynamics, and I mean Frank and I were talking about we've been talking about these subjects throughout the week and different dynamics of epigenetic upgrades or expression increase, more light coming from the sun. I mean, all this stuff that's happening internally for every human being, regardless of belief system. And I don't think it means you have to ever change your belief system. I
Hmm.
think people are going to get healthier. People are going to get like their bodies are going to heal. Like the world's changing around us. A lot of the corrupt stuff has been being taken care of for a while. I don't think this is the apocalypse. Like this is all those things are. It's not going to be what everybody thought it was going to be, or what some of the ancient texts say it's going to be. It's not going to be that. It's Christ in you. It's the thousand year reign of Christ, or the um. There's several other traditions, but talk about the 1,000 monks, I think, and the 1,000 Buddhas in the end time, and the but it's not just the Kali Yugas. I think it's actually going into a whole new age and era that we've never been in before.
Sure.
right?
We
So
covered a lot of ground right there. Like some of these people, like everyone does kind of have their own story, and maybe they feel that that is exactly what's going to happen, and that everything right now is pointing towards it. You know,
right.
what do you say to that person?
Okay, so one, teach their own. You don't have to believe anything. You can believe whatever you
Sure.
want. For me, like the more I've gone into my own intuition over it, the research I've done, the things I've found over years, just feeling it's really just feeling, to deeply feeling where the world is really at, or whatever that means. Feeling like the probabilities of the timelines that we're creating every moment by anchoring them in just through choices and awareness because of morphogenic fields and that whole dynamic, that the ones that are green disaster can only come if they're anchored in, if people believe they're going to happen. Now, I know there's facts to support it. You look at all the pedophilia rings and all the different stuff gone on, and all the stuff that's gone on the last 4 years. Like, I'm almost over all of it. Like the whole truther stuff, I'm almost like shifting into, okay, what do we do now? Like, how do we be awesome
Sure.
human beings and live in this world now? And so actually,
Now,
it's kind
when
of
you say that, how do we be awesome human beings and live in this world now? There's a question in the chat right now about asking for you to elaborate on the Christ in you, and do you kind of feel that there's crossover between that you know, part of being that best thing that you can be in the world, does that correlate to the idea of the Christ in you, or can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So, okay. So coming from the Christian paradigm, and beautifully, and I've said this in all of my other videos, but I feel that, depending on who's watching, that just it's important to note. I love everybody in there. I love the people I found in the Christian church. They're still amazing human beings and great. And through my research and my own internal exploration and study, I found things that moved me deeper into the Christian paradigm, all the extra biblical texts, the original Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew, the original languages, the original like traditions, the oral traditions, like a whole gamut of things that, even as passionate of a Christian as I was up until the last 3 or 4 years, 5 years, I had no idea about those other things, right? I never explored them. So exploring all of that, using the archetypes and the paradigms within the Christian realm, and the Son, the Father, the Holy Spirit, developing those relationships inside of me. They were relationships. So I realized there's a point that I realized, like, it just, through this whole process over a long period of time, as I was just progressing and understanding deeper things, but I didn't have, it's like monkey bars, right? I didn't have another paradigm to swing into to let go of Christianity, because that framework worked, right? I was
Right.
finding healing and wholeness in myself, becoming a better human being in all the ways, and dealing with traumas. There's incredible Christian ministries. There's loving, just loving people. Like, all that was working
Sure.
really, really well with dealing with my issues and anything negative. Those frameworks work. So why would you want to give them up?
Mm-hmm.
But then that deeper draw or calling, that there's more. I know there's more, right? And then you find the pathways, the dots that show you, oh yeah, there really is more. There really is more outside of it. So the Christ in you, it says in what is it, Romans, that in Romans, I think that those who are led by their flesh, that they produce wicked deeds, right? Malice, anger, bitterness, envy, rage, hatred, all that stuff. But those who are led by the Spirit, now it says the Spirit in the Bible, the implication is the Holy Spirit. You can call it Great Spirit, you can call it your own spirit. To me, it's our own spirit, it's our own higher self, it's our own soul that's done this lifetime or done this incarnating thing many, many, many times. So there's a collective cloud of you with all that wisdom that's stored quantumly also right now, that's parallel existing as we're having this lifetime now. So being able to access that dynamic, it says when you follow the Spirit, the leading of the Spirit, the fruits of the Spirit are produced in your life: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And against those things, there is no law. Right? So if you're led by the Spirit, that you don't need the construct of the laws and all those other things. Christians know this in the Christian church too. The difference is it's because of Christ in them, an external being who now is inside of them, and they're in that thought process. But to me, if you just look at the text differently, it's constantly interchanging. It's you, Christ in you, and you in Christ. Christ in you, you in Christ. You in Christ, Christ in you, because it's you. Right? When you go somewhere and you speak
I hear
and
what you're saying.
demons leave, they say, well,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus did it. Yeah, but you spoke, man. Like,
Right.
he did it through
Right.
me. Okay. Like, but your
Okay.
spirit did. I don't know. It's you who did it. I feel like,
So
it's not like,
I have a potentially inflammatory question
ooh,
raised
please.
by the person who writes in the chat, that they say at the end of it, they clearly know you, and at the end of it they say, come home. Do you feel like you've ever actually left home?
Yeah. And Kevin and Katie, I love you, by the way. I haven't talked to you in a long time. And that's the hardest thing I think for people, the conversations I've had, that I haven't gone anywhere. It's still Christ in me. I'm still the same person. It's just I guess expanded my understanding of what that inner standing even of what that means. And so like I would love to talk. Please message me if you guys want to chat and talk more, because there's more to be discussed. So to just write me off as being deceived in this whole, it's too oversimplified.
Fair enough. I mean, I think that's the thing too. I think if we say like there's one way that's home, I mean, whatever religion you happen to follow or ideology, there's at some point in time where the thing that we're really focusing towards is the all. It's omniscient, it's omnipresent, it's all the stuff, wherever you get with it. Source, universe, Buddha, it can be the Hindu Trimurti, it doesn't matter. It always ends up being the all, God, same thing. So if that is true, how can we not be home?
I like to think of so that my safe space, right, in meditation or entheogenic experiences or just whatever, like when I need to go to my safe space, like I just need everything out and I need to be totally 100% balanced and just no worries, right? That's for me, it's womb space or in the heart, but in the womb. And so just that visualization of being in the mother's womb, interdimensional fluids around, and I've had some experiences in the past on DMT where I was in the womb. I was back in the womb, the whole interdimensional dynamic. And it was the most, here's a really interesting experience to share. So it was this night where I was around the fire with some really good friends of mine. And the two of us were left there, and I ended up smoking some DMT around the fire, allegedly. And the first time it sent me into this place that was like living hell, but around the fire still. Like my whole consciousness was like being tormented through hell. Right. Now, mind you, I've had many experiences
Sounds
prior
horrible.
to this point. It was awful. I had many prior to this point. I had many after. So this is like in the midst of many experiences. It wasn't just like my one experience and let me tell you how awful it was. I'll give you context and like I'll tell you why it makes sense to me. And it's a beautiful story. But in the time, I remember being present it's like being sucked into a black hole. It is going to happen. I had just enough like pull to be like, okay, make sure he's over there. Tell him, just keep an eye on me so I don't do anything dumb like go in the fire, right?
Sure.
But
that
just
sounds
making
like
sure
a bad
he's
idea.
present. Yeah, no kidding. Not like just from whatever was going on. And then I went into it, and I remember this whole experience. And as I was coming back to just like realizing I have a body and I have hands and this is how they work, and like all that was coming back right after this. So intense. And I was like, screw that. I am going in again. I am not ending on some awful experience. I will never do that again if I don't do it again right now. Right.
It's kind of the idea that they say in ranching, if you get bucked off the horse, the most important thing to do is just get right back on it. Otherwise, you might not ever ride again.
And so I did. And this time though, I ended up being just like, and this is all intentional. It's conscious. I think going conscious and do these things, like I'm consciously aware of making these choices. It's the place I was in internally that made me desire to be laid on the grounds, like my face on the dirt by the fire and looking into the fire, right? And I felt that I was in the womb. I could see it. I could see the sacred geometry, the interdimensional just textures and patterns and overlays, and I understood. I saw the different life paths. I saw the relationships I had planned on making when I was here and that I have made, and ones like I just saw, like I saw all of it. It was all fluid, and it was beautiful. And it was the most. There's a beautiful video. I have to find it. I found it like a year and a half ago, or a little over a year ago. But it's someplace in Japan. I think they have this museum, and it's kind of like the womb space, or I guess you could do it like an entheogen experience. Like it's the whole place, the way they have the room set up and the lights and the floors and but in really beautiful, fascinating, cool ways. Right. And it was kind of like, it was like that, but on a really profound, deeply intimate internal level.
So in here, Kevin and Katie bring up again, they bring up keep looking in the ancient Hebrew because it's true. And they make reference to something. They make reference to YHWY. In the ancient Hebrew, I mean, that does mean something, but I think what they're talking about is YHVH, the tetragrammaton. How does this relate to that? How does that relate to our astral energies? How does that relate to the Christ inside of us?
Yeah, so my understanding of Yod He Vav He, which the most correct pronunciation that I've found is Yahweh. It's all vowels or vowel sounds or whatnot.
Sure.
which I've done mantras with the name and had really profound experiences, right? I could feel things in my DNA aligning. I think Yahweh, 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 very similar to a lot of the other chants that you can chant when your intention is not to give your power away to another entity or something outside of yourself, but to speak those words, and the resonance actually finds resonance in your cells, like yoga.
Right.
You know, that they're quantum antenna positions that when you put your body into it, you can have massive somatic release, you can have all sorts of things happen. And so I think that their mantra is just like any other at a core sound level. I do think they've been hijacked in a sense by religious paradigms that want to strictly bind it all down and say it has to be done this way and this is what it means. And when they only, and I'm sorry, but to all my Christian friends, when you only choose 66 books or the only legitimate books, it's just not true. There's so many other legitimate books
a
written at the
bounding
time.
of something and a restriction of an amount of information is kind of the same thing, yeah?
Say it again.
If they're restricting the amount of canon that's about something, then
Right.
that kind of in and of itself insinuates that it's at least limiting at some level, right? Like, that's not to say that through their methodologies they cannot achieve a profound experience where they live an extremely successful life and it's everything they ever wanted it to be. But if there's some part that it's leaving out, then there's some part that it's leaving out. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's the mindset, it's the paradigm. I understood when I was inside that paradigm that 66 books had all the answers that you could find, that they were relevant to this life, right? Another acronym, basic instructions before leaving Earth. It's one of the acronyms for it, which I appreciate, because I would agree. Basic instructions, meaning there's a whole lot more than just what's found in those books, and beyond just what's in the books, any book, any text. But the other extra biblical texts, like the Nag Hammadi texts, are excellent. Probably the best gospel I've ever read, the most holistic, paradigm conveying gospel for a human being to hear and think about and process, masculine, feminine, all that stuff, is the Essene Gospel of Peace. And he spends a tremendous amount of time describing beautifully our relationship with the mother and our bodies, because our bodies are of her. And so it adds the whole other aspect that isn't in Christianity blatantly. It's not in the text so much the feminine, like it's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the amorphous Holy Spirit, when it's actually a feminine pronoun, the Shekinah or Shekinah, right? So but if you say that, that's heresy with Christians. No, that's not what it is. Like, yeah, it is, man. You know, but like, and so a lot of it's how you look at it. And the Essene Gospel of Peace, so he describes the relationship with the mother and what that's like, in addition to the relationship with the father. And it seems like to me the father dynamic, the spirit, is the things I said earlier. It's more behavioral dynamics and your internal emotional state, right? And the body also is in perfect, you can't dissociate your body from the two. That if your body's discomfortable, it's really hard to get, to chill out and get in a nice, good emotional state and whatever.
Sure.
And so he goes into all the dynamics of the body. So there's just a lot more out there that's really true. And then you find that inside of yourself. Like he talks about sun gazing in there. He talks about doing enemas to clean your body. And here's what's fascinating. Okay, listen to this, Kevin and Katie. So like in this text, he talks about that. He goes, do these cleanses to purify yourselves and to keep Satan from you, or to get Satan out of you, right? And so he talks about they had fasted for 7 days, and when he came back, that there was this one person who had been fasting, but he was going into seizures at times. He's trying to throw himself into the fire. That he was
this guy's dangerous.
He's been fasting 7 days, like he's going nuts. He's like losing his stuff. They're saying, and so Jesus told him, go get he said, go get some like milk or yogurt, I don't know, whatever, and bring him over here and bend him, like put him on his knees and lean him over the milk. And they poured the milk on, and the vapors came up, and this massive parasite came up out of his mouth to eat it. Jesus grabbed 2 stones, smashed its head together, pulled it out of its body, and he said, there's Satan. So think about that.
I was not aware of that story. That was a very profound story. What book what does this come from? Which gospel?
The Essene Gospel of Peace.
The Essene Gospel of Peace. Do you know somewhere online where people can read that?
Yeah, if I remember, I'll put a link to something. But there's PDFs.
We'll put a link in the comments below the video at some point in time. You can check back later and get that.
Yeah. So if you think about that, then everything spiritual is also physical. What is Satan? Ha-Satan is the adversary. Like there's my understanding of the original Jewish, even now the Orthodox Jewish, they don't believe in an actual Satan. He's archetypal and metaphorical, and there are many Satans, and humans are very satanic when they're following their flesh and all those things. They're behaving satanic. It's demon, day and moon. the demons in
Sure.
us, the lower chakras operating, not healing from there, and you constantly short cycle there. And then if you can get a full cycle going, right, then that's a Christ in you, or being more fully present in you with all things operating as they should, in balance and healthily.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that if one is so inclined, they can take this whole metaphor of Satan, the process of Jesus, God, and look at the entire thing as basically kind of like a Satan bad, God good, Jesus process of escalating between them.
Yeah. Well, because if you think about that too, so like you just went down to the bowels of hell, and there's some videos that do a great job on it, showing the actual terminology. There's a book written in 1919 by a Dr. George something, but it's called
We're getting very precise here, folks. It's Dr. George something. You can check that out on Google. He's got a lot of good books.
Dr. George something is written like 1919. It's called like the God man made flesh. I don't know, but he breaks down the anatomy. He breaks down the metaphors in the Bible and how accurate it is. Like he gets, a lot of people have heard about Jacob's ladder and the pineal gland and the 33 spinal column and all that stuff, but that's also a metaphor for your cerebral spinal fluid and moving through your actual energy system, being working, angels ascending and descending, meaning you're not just going up here and living in bliss and being some weird, voodoo or not voodoo, some weird guru teacher that's dissociated from an actual real life experience, because they just then chill up here. So it's being able to be fully present, experience, and enjoy everything in life, but balance. So you're not going into rage and going in places that, that destroy your life or take you off of places that you don't want to be.
Sure. And looking at that way of, this Jacob's ladder metaphor again, do you feel that that kind of has crossover into the idea of the Christ in you as well? Because these stories are very close to one another.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So I realized at one point, because I've had dialogues my whole life, most of my life, with the Father and with Jesus and with the Holy Spirit. They're different resonances. They're different dialogues. They're different relationships within that paradigm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to realize like that what had happened. So I was born into a culture where I was going to be raised in Christianity. So my higher self, if you will, had to put on the glove of the Father and of Jesus and of the Holy Spirit so that it could relate to me. It could talk to me so I could trust it, right? Or me, trust me, the me that came out here before I lost my memories going through the womb, that whole thing. And so
that whole birth thing.
Yeah, that whole birth thing, which is a whole other thing, man. What I realized to connect back that experience I was talking about earlier. So at the end of that being in the womb space dynamic, right at the end as I was kind of landing and kind of coming back, but I remember looking in the fire and there's this little triangle portal thing in the fire. And I realized that's where I was about to go, but that's where I went in my experience that happened just prior. I was literally being birthed. That whole fire experience was me being birthed. That was neurological birth trauma.
Wow.
Okay, so in birth, I was a forceps baby, one of like 0.4% or something back in '86. Okay. I was also, my collarbone was broken coming out of the womb because I couldn't get my shoulders out or whatever. So
they were basically ripping you out of there.
Right, and I've had read Janice Barcelo's book about birth traumas. I mean, she has like 750 sources cited in there. You get in and see the system that we have set up now is, you can call it satanic. I mean, it is in the way that we have no idea the damage we're doing and how poorly we're treating humans in the birthing process. Even like the general person doesn't. Obviously, at some level, they got really ignorant or really malicious, which is a whole other dynamic for another time. But like, yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot too. Birth traumas thing that people don't realize. That's why womb space for me is really healing, because it's going back to the beginning of this incarnation. So every time I go there, I'm also snapping the string between the present and there, and finding anything between there and now that's out of resonance or needs to be healed or whatever. Every time I go there.
So April in chat says that she believes that we should birth in water. How do you feel about that with the birth traumas and how we're doing it now? You think water births are better?
Well, now that I'm a man and we're two guys and you're talking about how women should birth, yes, let me give my opinion.
Oh, this is just a male's opinion on it. You know what I mean? Nobody's right. If the girl's having a baby, should have the baby however the hell she wants to have the baby. It's her baby. Right. But like as far you don't have to come at it directly from a physiological standpoint. We have a lot of symbolic role of water inside of all kinds of things.
Yeah, totally. So like Yeah, so water makes sense. It's a more smooth transition, right? Water to water. And then you come up out of the water because your mom's physical hands or dad or whatever family is there to physically touch you and pull you out of the water. I mean, imagine the first time most of us are touched in a first world country, it's with plastic gloves coming out of the womb, right?
Sure, yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and also that our umbilical cord, it can go up to 4 days with once the baby comes out before they need to cut the umbilical cord. When it's finally done pumping life to the baby, then it goes gray and white and whatever, and you can cut it. But until
Yeah,
then,
how, do
you're
you happen to
creating
have any
another
idea?
trauma.
Do we cut it like right away? I don't. We cut it
I
like right
I
away, right? I
I
don't really
think
know.
so. I don't know the
If
details
anybody
of all,
knows, feel free to let us know. We don't really know anything about having kids
I
because, like
I
we're
know
guys.
I've
So,
yeah, I haven't been in the hospital and watched anything, in my life, but like I mean, I've read enough to
yeah, okay.
see
They
the
say that
difference
we
in
we
dynamics.
do. We cut it right
Yeah.
away. It makes sense that it would still have some kind of connection. I mean, like if it comes out still connected, it might still be doing something, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
I don't
So
know
think
anything about this, but it
so
seems
think about if
sensible.
it's Yeah, so think about if the placenta thing is still internal, so it's still giving the life force or life beat to the child. Now the child's on the mother's
Sure.
chest, hearing her mother's heartbeat from the outside. They just heard it from the inside. They're still getting fed from the inside while they're on the outside. They're
Yeah, that
getting
makes
touched
sense.
by their mother's physical hands. Like, think about just logically how much better of a transition that would be to bring a human being into this life, just doing those simple things. But a lot of times we grow up not even thinking about it. We just go to the hospital and we
Yeah.
do what we do, and we decide, the parents decide if they're going to take an epidural or not. Or if they're going to have a C-section or not. Those are kind of the biggest,
Well, I
seems
think
like,
we kind of like agree to the idea, or I mean, many people do that. Just like like the doctor knows what they're doing, right? Like they're probably doing the right thing to make sure that everything goes right. And I think maybe they are to the
right.
best of their ability, like with what they're taught and the standards that they're working with and such.
Right. Well, so like, yeah, absolutely. It's not like the doctors are wicked and evil. I think it's hard to say doctors are ignorant, but everyone's ignorant,
Huh?
right? Doctors are ignorant of, for example, the average, I think, medical doctor gets, I think it's 6 hours of nutritional education in medical school.
That
And
doesn't seem
anyone
like
who's
a
done,
lot.
no kidding. So yeah, but they're the ones you go to tell them what's wrong with you and how to get yourself better. And they don't even
I feel
understand how
like I've
nutrition
studied
heals the
nutrition
body.
a lot more than 6 hours and feel like I don't know shit about it.
There's so much to learn, right? But I learned enemas, and I learned that from some ancient texts, all that stuff. But I
Sure.
learned the modern science and enemas and all sorts of stuff. Urine therapy,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. It's super legit, totally real. I've done all of it. Could talk about it for a long time. It's all real, man. It's this DNA skin suit technology. It's just how these things work,
Skin suit
you know?
technology.
Yeah. So we're an
Yeah.
infinite being having an experience, and
Samantha Samantha Carlson in the chat says that she's birthed 4 children and 2 of them are water births, and she felt that those were definitely easiest. And notes that you go to instant cuddle mode and it's beautiful, and you wait for the cord to stop pulsating. I mean, I'm
cool.
again, I'm not qualified for this, but that sounds a lot more natural to me.
Totally. And it's cool to hear. Well, here's the thing. So check this out. Orgasmic birth is how it was supposed to be. There are many ways. You just look up on YouTube, like orgasmic birth interview or orgasmic birth. All you gotta do is hear like one woman talk about it and go, "Oh, that makes sense." I've just never heard anyone talk about that. Like,
I feel like I need to
you
go
know,
listen to somebody talk about that, because when you say it to me, I'm like, wow, it's totally polarized to the entire concept of
okay.
labor,
So I'll oversimplify it based on my understanding. Like, 'cause I remember doing a few interviews and where I was grasping that paradigm, and I got a few books on it and stuff. But like, um, one is the paradigm going in that you're submitting to the movement with the child, that this is a
Okay.
process of moving through, and that if it's done in a way of submission, not saying it's like hearing people done it who've gone from like kids without ever even having that concept, but then trying to do that with their next few kids, or like the progression, like it wasn't necessarily that way with the next
Uh-huh.
one, or the progression in their own psyche, like what they were, all this dynamics. So some of it's positions, some of the more ancient positions, water birthing. There's like a bunch of different ways you can like hang off your husband's neck, or there are different
Sure.
ways that are way more efficient than laying on your back. It like massively hinders birth by laying on your back, for one.
Seems sensible.
Um,
Angles and all.
right. Yeah, gravity, like
Yeah.
geez,
Just
and
from a
push them
simple
out
math
sideways.
perspective, it seems sensible that there would be other better positions.
Right. But it also hits the way when you're in tune with your body and the baby. And I know this is a hard conversation. It's been a hard one for my mom, and it can be hard for women who've had kids, because it's like, one, it can seem like um this is what you should have done, or like it can leave a sense of guilt or something, as if you should have done it this way. And it's like, dude, we do the best we can with what we know. It is what it
Sure.
is. So when you hear this now, it's like it's one, fascinating to think about. Two, if you haven't had kids or plan to have another one, that seems to me fascinating to think about. Let's say they're just bad belief systems we have. Oh, it's going to hurt. Oh, I know it hurts because I already had a kid. Okay, fair
That
enough.
would
That
totally
has been
change the
your
way we look
experience.
at having kids, I feel like. If everybody thought like having kids was going to be the next best good time in their life, this would totally dramatically change the psychological approach to that.
Right. Well, and then
So
also,
April is saying in the chat that there apparently there's a thing. I knew that there was orgasms that came from multiple different locations in one. She says that there are uterus orgasms, and so that would make so much sense. And if that is a true thing, that would make so much sense. I suspect that it is. That's crazy.
yeah,
And then Samantha is also saying that it made sense for her. It helped her ease through her two all natural water births, and that it's about relaxing and letting the body do what it needs to do. And I really agree with the relaxing, letting the body do what it needs to do. And obviously not from birthing a child, but just from
right.
going through pain and everything in my life, whether it be a psychological pain or a difficult energetic situation, or it be like I screwed up my foot or something. Really like relaxing my body and allowing it to do what it does has really
Yeah.
shown me a lot in my life, that the body, and maybe that just like kind of our technology, maybe more than just a physical body, but maybe other kinds of bodies as well, seems to be very well equipped to deal with the things that it experiences. How do you feel that about just like letting the body do what it needs to do rather than like trying to interject in that process?
Yeah, totally. So I think so I've heard this from several people, and I've heard this concept, and I may have developed it in my own ways and my own visualizations. But to map
Mm-hmm.
out your own body, to know your own body, right? So when
Sure.
you're having pains and things, to literally feel into it, and
Right.
even for lack of a better word, okay, so entangle with it, and consciously entangle with the pain,
Sure.
and then allow that, if even for your own sake, to come out through your mouth in a voice. Like, what is that pain? Is it angry? Is it frustrated? Is it like, I mean, if just a tool, a technique, right?
Sure.
um to anthropomorphize it, in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
to help you process the source of that energy, if it's not just physical and you got hit with the tamer on the toe, but depending on what you believe, that's all related to, drawing and attracting things to ourselves anyway, and connecting,
Yeah, I might be
the
crazy with the correlations, but I never have any type of physical pain that I can't draw back to something psychological and then something also in the psyche behind it. It literally never happens anymore. It might
100%
just be
agree.
because
Yep.
I've gotten really good at basically making a pattern out of nothing. I don't know, but I find them everywhere.
Right. And if it works, I mean, so how does that benefit you by finding patterns and all that?
I mean, I feel like it benefits me massively. The more angles that we have to work on something, the more quickly we're able to deal with it, I feel like. So if I'm able to kind of find like a psyche or spiritual based layer, a psychological or mind based layer, and a physical and body based layer with which I am experiencing some part of myself, that there's a correlation between all of them, I feel like I can really make a lot of progression or evolution or growth or something that perceives to me as making something better out of myself much more efficiently if I can come at it from more angles. So I draw the correlations between that primarily just because I think it enhances efficiency if I can look at it from a bunch of different angles.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree. So expanding your understanding, right? Being able
Sure.
to see additional perspectives. I think that's I wonder, so I'm trying to think through several concepts. I wonder if adding additional perspectives, being willing to add additional perspectives, right? Layers and
Hmm.
perspectives to
Hmm.
your own understanding, or to even check your understanding at the door, and
Sure.
to put on a new perspective like clothing, but fully embody that perspective. And I know at times, like for example, when I was first starting to explore the extra biblical texts, I was terrified. I was terrified of getting deceived. I was terrified of, I just didn't know, right? But
Because
then,
of what the texts were saying,
well, because
you
of
were
what,
now
no, no,
feeling
because,
terrified or what?
no, because of what the text might say. This is before
Oh,
actually
before you
reading
even
an
read them?
extra. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What,
This is
just
how
because
heavy
they might have something different in them? That's what the whole thing was?
I guess, right? But
Okay.
so, well, so okay, so you learn. again, like within the Christian paradigm, I was very, very diverse. Like I wasn't like just constricted, bound Christian, right? Very diverse, connected with everyone, like really, embodied, the whole dynamic, myself and being
Right.
healed and whole and loving and all that beautiful stuff. But when it came, and it was finding again within that paradigm, all the metaphors and the archetypes and the templates I needed to be successful in life. Like, it seemed to be working and to love and to forgive and like all these things, right? But then when it came to extra biblical texts, I'd heard about them and I'd read why they weren't legitimate. Like nobody's like crapping all over them and like but they're just delegitimizing it. So it's like, I guess you could read them, but there's no point. They're not really, doesn't matter. And you got to be careful if you do, because you got to really use discernment, whatever. You could get deceived because they're not official texts. So they could have a lot of truth in there and just a little bit of lies that
They're
makes you fall away.
not official text.
Right. And that's where I know earlier Kevin and them were talking about, that's where they feel like what happened to me. I know that's what things with other people, like, oh, I read the extra biblical text, now look at me now,
Yeah.
but that's from A to Z. Like there's a million steps in between. It's not just that. What that did though open up when I found out it was a legitimate text from that time. Like here's one of the most primary extra biblical texts is the Book of Enoch. Is quoted by Jude in the Bible. Jude is one chapter long, and he gives 30% of his real estate in the Bible to Enoch. He quotes from it. Says that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, said this, and he quotes two paragraphs or whatever from the Book of Enoch. Now, the Book of Enoch, I didn't even know it was a real thing that existed until I started doing research, because most of the Christian churches don't know.
Sure.
The Ethiopian church has had a copy since 400 AD, and then it's said to go back in Ethiopic script, and then it's they had another copy. But the Book of Enoch elaborates on the whole time during the Nephilim, the fallen angels coming to earth before the flood, and Enoch being there. Because in the Bible, you get a real quick blurb, right? That all men had become corrupted and become wicked on the earth, and God grieved that He had made them, or repented that He had made them. Was said, and then it said, and in those days, and then afterwards were the Nephilim, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, or the sons of God, or the angels, the fallen angels came, who took women and slept with women and created offspring of their own. And so in Enoch, you find out elaborates like for chapters and chapters and chapters, right? That's the Titans that were created and all the mythology, where some of the first creatures created by the fallen angels come and messing with DNA down here. Right? This is all in the text. This is in the Book of Enoch. And the stuff that was fascinating is it elaborates on stuff that's already in the Bible. It does reference the Anakim, which are the Anunnaki too. They can all connect, right? The giants who to them we were grasshoppers in their eyes, is what it said. Right? Giants in the land. So like they're in the Bible text. They just don't elaborate on it a lot. So then you find these other texts that are the elaborations, and the book itself is endorsed by the authors in the Bible. So to me, like if any Christian's going to explore outside and worried about getting deceived, like that's a good one to start with, because that's really safe material. That's the same book that Jesus knew, all the disciples knew. They quote, if you actually
this is the Book of Enoch.
Book of Enoch. If you do the cross references, it's Jesus quotes the Book of Enoch over 50 times in the New Testament. In the actual 66 book Bible.
The Book of Enoch it's non-canonical, right? Like it's not
correct.
An accepted
it's not part
book,
of the 66. Yeah.
But it does very much so seem to follow kind of the same standard as the other Gospels do, correct?
Yeah. So the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jasher, the Book of Jubilees, they're all like parallel texts to the Book of Genesis, to some of the other books in there. Then like, here's the thing about it. It's not like they're random outside the Bible. The Bible itself mentions, I think, over 26 different extra biblical texts as valid. Like in the Bible, it mentions other texts. And I think the Book of Jasher, it says, he's detailing out a day that happened, like when the sun stood still in the sky and they won this war or whatever. And if it says the details are written down in the Book of Jasher. Well, there's actually a Book of Jasher. And people just don't know that, like today they have one, they found.
Why do you think that those aren't part of the accepted literature? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think at a root level, at a core level, by the religious construct or other entities, however you want to call it, but whatever, I think they don't want to make people see, they don't want people to connect the dots outside of Christianity. Right?
Why wouldn't they want people to connect the dots? Why put it outside of Christianity? Why not incorporate it to Christianity?
Oh yeah, they tried. Road to Romans, 2,000 years, tried to incorporate everybody into Christianity, right? But what happened?
I don't mean that. I mean like incorporate these other books. Why not incorporate it? Why is that not part of Christianity?
So I think for one, like the Book of Enoch is slowly coming back into the mainstream awareness of the church, because there's so much good material that just supports the biblical texts, right? Because I didn't
Sure.
fall away from the church after reading Enoch. It was
Uh-huh.
just a part of like reading all the, not just the biblical text, but all the other study and all the other research, and seeing how they're all connected. And so I think
Yeah.
at a religious level, religious institution level, the Catholics who tried to not let the Nag Hammadi text come out, and they tried, there's so many texts they've just stuck in under the Vatican or have not revealed. There's so much information on all that. So
Yeah,
they very
allegedly
much
they're underneath the
streamline.
Vatican in some massive library or something. There's apparently all
Yeah.
the books with all the secrets to the universe or something. We're all
Oh
just
yeah.
wasting our time.
Well, and
I
like
have a
I think
certain way like a hard time believing that.
no, that's not, well, it's not that we're wasting our time when they have the secrets. They're just they have retained the interdimensional documents and things that can affect time. And more than that, I think it's more than just documents, right? It's the thing that secret governments have all around the
Sure.
world, all sorts of tech and all sorts of, whatever. But like as far as the texts go,
Uh, I mean, maybe it is.
yeah. But as far as the texts go, I think uh the primary reason is if you get too many extra biblical texts, you see how they all overlap with every other tradition around the world. They're all telling the
Okay.
same stories. They're all
So
archetypal.
overlap.
They are right. So
People
it's like
don't
I
seem
think
to
if you get
like it
too
when you
far,
tell them that, like, if they really buy into one ideology, if you tell them that their ideology, it's like, I found a lot of times in my life, like accidentally when I was younger, people would tell me about their ideology, and I'm like, oh, that's a lot like Buddhism, and they're like, no, it's not, and I'm like, I mean, what? Wait, like, I'm like, I'm
yeah,
trying to come together here, like it's the same, like it's cool, that's
yeah,
neat, and they're like, no, no, it's not. It's not anything like Buddhism at all. Actually, it's like this, and Buddhism is not that. And or this is just an example. I'm not saying specifically
yeah,
those,
yeah,
but like I feel like when a person oftentimes has one of these like religions or specific ideologies that they follow, they actually have they're very oftentimes quite adverse to the idea that there might be crossover between their religion and another one. Like,
right.
what wouldn't there
Well,
be crossover between your religion and another one if your religion was truly the way and these other ones were like not the way? But I mean, you're like the whole way, so crossover,
so the
right?
main
Like,
the main crossover or hindrance, I think, with most Christians is and this is my dad. I'll just revert instead of doing generic with Christians. I'll talk about the dialogues I have had with my father because him and I had dialogued a lot. He was still very much in the Christian paradigm, but he
mhm.
was able to. We met for like 2 years every morning for every Sunday for breakfast, and we go over
Yeah, and
tons of the stuff
if
that I was
people
talking
are
about.
interested in watching more of you talking with your dad, there is like there's a longer video on the channel of you just kind of like having a chat with your dad, and you guys go into a lot of stuff about this. So like,
That's right.
there
Yeah.
is a longer chat on there. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the story. Just shamelessly plugging the video.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyways,
You're plugging me. It's okay. No worries. Yeah, it's funny. Oh, since you mentioned that, I look back at that one and I'm like, oh, I feel so bad because I remember just being it was cool, lots of it were fun and cool, but like me and my dad have a relationship, and I was trying to get into that level of our relationship on camera, and he was more in kind of like presentation mode, and so I
sure,
came off as kind of an asshole, and I'm like, oh shit, oh well,
sure.
is what
Yeah,
it
you were
is.
trying to have more, kind of be more improv-y with him than he was.
Yeah, but like,
So what
uh,
was your point too? With sorry to like kind of diverge to that, but
no
you
worries.
know, yeah.
Okay, what were we on before that? The books and what was the other dynamic? Religions, crossover, that's what it was. Okay, so I think the main thing it comes down to, like with my dad too, it's Jesus is the only way, an external Jesus that you have to connect with and receive the gift he's already paid for you. Right? If
Okay.
we're gonna really put it into those terms, not just like say a repentance prayer, it's more an internal place in your heart. You never know if someone's actually saved or not, really, because only God knows their heart, right? Only
Okay.
they actually know what place they're going into internally to come into
Mhm.
alignment with Christ or with yourself or whatever. And it's
Right.
in the fruit, right? That's why the fruits of the spirit are. So if you in your life, I don't, are increasing in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, like in general, we all like, so most people, the problem with like thinking we have a linear growth over life is just not how it works, right? It's like this
Sure,
all
it's
over,
kind of
but
all over the place.
ideally,
Sometimes you're going backwards and shit.
right. But
Yeah,
ideally over time you have a growth curve as we learn. But it's all over the place. And so anyway, if you have those in increasing measure in different ways in your life, like that, I would say that's pretty good evidence that you're on the right path. All those
sure.
things. You're following, you're getting rid of the things that don't serve you, every weight and sin and weight that easily hinders and binds, and sin is just
Yeah.
so here's a really cool thing about sin. so in the Bible, there's three different concepts. There's sin, transgression, and iniquity. Right? Sin doesn't send anybody to hell. Sin means to miss the mark. It's an archery term. So if you're aiming for the bullseye and you miss by a millimeter, you have sinned by a millimeter, but you sinned, right? So
Okay.
it's not this big like
Seems hard to hit.
right, but so it's not a big deal. It's like somebody saying, did I hit the bullseye?
Right.
No, you missed. You sinned. No big deal. But we associate sin
Gotcha.
with like, deserving of hell because you sinned or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, but sin is to miss the mark. Then transgression's to be gonna go shoot at a target or whatever, but you decide, no, I don't want to play this way, and you turn and shoot your friend in the ass, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, that seems worse.
you're intentionally transgressing. The point was to like improve your own skill set, or I don't know, whatever, and you literally went and hurt somebody else, or even just
Right.
shot off a tree or something because you want to. So there's transgression. Then there's iniquity. Iniquity is bloodline generational transfer of curses or blessings in your epigenetic expression. Right, so things that they can see now that are more prominent in certain
That sounds
people,
like
or
witchcraft to me.
so just the physiological dynamic of when someone lives their life in a way that is not in harmony with their environment or their own body or their own soul,
Sure.
or traumas
Sure.
that they don't have cleared or whatever, and then you have a child, they will carry on those traumas, those epigenetic expressions, because they were
Okay.
resonant in you when you had them.
Okay.
So
So
at a
where does
DNA
iniquity
level,
come into that, though? Like
so
how these
iniquity
curses and
would,
blessings, how are
yeah,
they
yeah.
applying those?
So iniquity or blessings would carry on the DNA, but sometimes it's active subconsciously. I'm like most people, I don't know why their life keeps going these awful cycles. They haven't found the subconscious or unconscious patterns or belief systems, or
Okay.
things going on genetically or morphogenic fields that they reside within. And then, but by bringing conscious awareness to them, right? So in meditation, looking for generational blessings in your DNA that just haven't been turned on yet. If 80% of our DNA hasn't been turned on, there's a lot to find, man.
Okay. So those could be good things too. When we're saying
Absolutely.
iniquity, like it could be good, could be bad,
Well,
but
iniquity is always the reference, is generational iniquity is the negative, right?
okay.
But generational blessings would be the other side of that. I
Sure.
rephrase it with iniquity just being the paradigm of carrying
So
on
the
epigenetic
iniquity, it would be
expression.
kind of like, like if so sin is you don't hit the target, right?
Right.
Transgression is you purposely shoot your friend, and iniquity is kind of like you purposely shoot your friend's kid.
Yeah, and or just purposely transgressing enough over time that it literally changes. Think about the DNA. So it's like, because people get out of, well, how many times before I go to hell?
Uh-huh.
But like, forget about all that shit. How many times does it take for you to repeat behaviors, or your parents to repeat behaviors, not change them? Think about how they affect your life still to this day. There's still habit patterns you're working out because your parents never dealt with their
Sure. I
shit.
mean, I'd still do stupid shit all the time. So,
Right,
I
and
mean,
I can blame
yeah.
a good amount of things on my parents, right? Like based on seeing how things they just didn't know what they at the time, or things just our culture. It has nothing to do with my parents being, anything. It's just the culture we're raised in and some of the traumas you
Yeah.
experience, and like, so
April in the chat says ancestral patterns, and I think that's probably a good way of marking them. When you're trying to like, you
totally,
either are purposefully or impurposefully being exactly like your mother or your father or your grandmother, grandfather. Like you're
totally,
probably carrying out some kind of cycle, and it's probably this. Yes.
yeah, totally. No, that makes sense. That works also. I think a lot of it, again, there's well, especially with the texts, they're very archetypal and metaphorical and stories, right? So
Mm-hmm.
trying to connect the two. So if the sin, transgression, iniquity to practical dynamics and into to DNA. So I think so. I personally think we should have full. We do have full. We just haven't realized it. I think access to and control over, control is the wrong word, engagement with every part of our DNA.
Okay.
Right. So if 80% of it, 80+% is what's called junk. They call it junk DNA because they don't see it actively
Don't
encoding
believe in it, but
proteins.
yes, yes.
Right. But that's the reason. The reason of they define it that way. They define it as DNA that's not encoding proteins. So they
Sure.
don't, in their value system of measurement, they don't see it doing anything. Therefore, it's junk. Okay.
Right.
So how do we then internally in a meditation or whatever go into that 80% and start finding things, like start turning it on? Just find it and
How
turn it
do
on.
we
Use
do
that
that?
paradigm. Well,
How do we do
visualizations are
that?
great. How would you do
What
that?
do you
You done
visualize?
those before?
I mean, I've done like some stuff down that line. Taking the models that we already have to talk about those kinds of things like DNA helixes and visualizing on
Mhm.
that, but just coming at it more kind of illogically of that this is what the stuff is supposed to look like, and I want it to expand more than it is right now, and focusing my energy in that direction. There's
Hmm.
so if we want to, I mean, additional visualization added to that, I think, is probably all kind of like flair. You need some kind of symbol that holds the space of what it is that you're trying to really put your attention towards. And I usually just use something if we already have like a picture for it. You know what I mean? Might as well use
Totally.
that. That works just fine. And then just projecting the energy towards that. If you want to add some kind of specific visualizations of something happening, like you can flavor it up all you want, but at the end of the day, like it's really about eating the chicken. It's not really about like what seasonings were put on it or what sides you served with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You need to symbolically represent the thing that is the object of your attention, and then
Yeah.
project a lot of attention towards the thing with a lot of intention, and then you get results pretty
Yeah.
much. So
Yeah, great way to sum it up. No, I totally agree. And like you said, using an imagery that is already provided or something, it's already a shared common experience, the DNA helix, right? And
yeah,
I think so much of just communicating, but especially if you're trying to help somebody with something, is finding metaphors that work for them and work for you, right? That
yeah, you
you
got to
can
speak to them
roll
in their
with.
symbol set.
Yeah. Oh, their symbol set. I like that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think that's like the most important part of communication, especially if you're trying to get across actually deep concepts. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can see it's pretty easy with numbers. Like if numbers start getting too big, and I tell you, so it's like 300,000 football fields. Like you can't even like really properly put that picture in your mind. It doesn't mean anything to you. We
Mm-hmm.
have to get. It's like if I say like it's like the distance from here to the furthest observable star. That's actually better than saying like 300,000 football fields or whatever, because you're like, wow, it's so far. You know but
Mm-hmm.
we have to get some kind of symbol set that's really understood to you, and this is really just obviously a broad generalization and being very vague about that, where you want to be even more precise with that. If you come from a Christian or an Islamic background, or you come from, I don't know, some type of witch doctor tribe, it's best that I talk in the way that you have already talked throughout your life if I'm trying to get new concepts across to you. So, or even
Totally.
just try and get like my thoughts across to you or anything.
Right. Yeah, that's to me, so the act of storytelling, right? That's one of the things that's been
Sure.
lost with just the written text, like even just the Quran or just the Torah or the Hebrew Torah or just the Christian Bible,
Hmm.
is that without the oral historians or the oral texts that have come with them, which they have, that's the Kabbalah, the oral traditions that have been written down that go into the actual like esoteric and more metaphysical and philosophical takes on a lot of the scriptures in beautifully profound ways, like very abstract
Sure.
and like really profound.
Yeah.
But they also retell some of
Kabbalah
the
is
normal
very
stories.
interesting just from a philosophical standpoint.
How so? What's your understanding of Kabbalah?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of angles that a person can come at Kabbalah, but just on the philosophical level of kind of compartmentalizing the human and transhuman experience into spaces that feel like they're more operable. Or if you want to go on another level, like if we want to go kind of more basic, like Kabbalistic tree of life is, in one way of looking at it, is very definitely like a three-path kind of thing. And I think by looking at the function of basically threefold systems, we can learn a lot philosophically just about the function of life. I mean, really, like
Yeah,
birth, life, death is functionally a threefold system that we're all living through. And by looking at philosophical or any kind of metaphorical expressions of threefold systems, we can come more to learn more about the function of those threefold systems. So Kabbalah provides a good opportunity with this, with the left and right and center paths, and so really the thing, I mean, it's really endless. Like Kabbalah is that's a big thing to say right there. There's a ton of
right.
correlations inside of that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, though. So for me, when I started looking into Kabbalah through the studying the Hebrew tradition stuff, and then it's kind of like astrology in a sense because of the tree of life, right? And the sephirotes and the ways to interpret those, and there's so many overlays and there's so many nuances, and like, um, And so I remember drawing it out on a whiteboard and like studying the original Hebrew words and the original meanings, and the
Hmm.
two primary from keter, crown, is comes to the feminine and masculine, the hakma, and which is wisdom, and bina, which is understanding, or bina. And um, just that paradigm alone, just seeing the balance, right? The masculine feminine balance, and wisdom and understanding,
Hmm.
and then the ways that that's elaborated, the way that connects with numerology and gematria, and within, just even within the Hebrew text, like it's so multidimensional and expansive. That's why I also
Sure.
understand, Christians or people who really dive into those original texts, they could be there their whole lives and be totally satisfied and still learning and still growing in massively internally interdimensional places. And that's where
Hmm.
people think that, eventually you just get bored in there and you're just bound, and like, no, you're really not, man. There really is a lot of massive expansion that someone could do for their whole lifetime and never get bored and be growing as a person in a massive way beyond just the basics. I'm talking about like metaphysical, beautiful, esoteric ways.
You're saying just inside of Kabbalah.
Yeah, well, within Christianity, but all of it when you get back into some of the deeper stuff. Yeah,
Sure.
but that's if they want to choose to use that as their only, like, this is what I believe and it's the only thing
Yeah.
I believe and
This
this is
is the
what's real.
vehicle. This is
Yeah.
the vehicle. Do you
It could
think there's
work.
any benefit to choosing one vehicle or many vehicles? Is there a better way to do it, in your opinion?
Dude, honestly, the more the better, man. The belief system of the moment that matters, right? That lines up with your core value system in your life, whatever those are, and
Sure.
your core pursuits, whatever metaphors and paradigms and archetypes and stories and whatever works for you, man. And the more you incorporate, the better to me, because one, there's more things for my psyche to bounce off of. I have more
Sure.
archetypes, I have more stories, I have more concepts to grasp what I'm feeling in a new way,
Hmm.
you know?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I find a lot of benefit from having more stories myself, but at the same time, I definitely have found certainly benefits from like really like hard focusing on one way of doing things.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever found a place where it was like, I mean, I guess I can honestly say I definitely have not, because I haven't done one thing my whole life. There's all kinds of different things that I've switched around to, but I've never been able to stay just on the one thing. I've actually always kind of like questioned the other side of life in that way. Like, what would it have been like if, I played baseball a bunch when I was younger. What if I would have just taken like baseball like so seriously, and my whole life had gone where I played baseball the whole time, and like, what would that have been like? So I
Right.
haven't done any one thing the whole time. I've always kind of followed that like next passion, get a lot of interest
Yeah,
in
yeah,
that,
yeah.
draw connections between all of it. So I've never seen the other side of life where you do the same thing all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I did, I mean, I did that for a long time, but again, so the difference is, I think it's, there's a term, I think Andrew Barthes says this. Um, the problem is when you have repetition without
Hmm.
illumination.
Hmm.
So when
Sure.
you're repeatedly doing anything, but it's not bringing new levels of joy or enjoyment or
Right.
pleasure or understanding or healing or whatever,
Yeah.
then
Doing the
move
same
on.
thing over
Or
and over and not getting anything out of it. You're functionally expending energy for no return.
right, and being able to. So he's also said something I agree with a lot too, is that if you're not doing it with joy in your heart, if you're not like doing it with joy, then you're doing it wrong. Ritual, ceremony,
Sure.
meditation,
Yeah.
whatever. Or at least balance. It's not like you have to be super excited and joyful, but at a core level,
Sure. Is
I'm
is joy super excited though? Or is joy something different?
well. So I think that's an expression of it, right? But then if we're gonna pare it down, joy, it's hard because it's English words. So like, if you have a sense of, okay, maybe what's better to say based on my perception of the paradigm, um, and the way it works for me is having a childlike wonder and awe about everything. Right? So the
Sure.
rituals aren't boring. Like whatever ritual you have, lighting candles, doing prayers, doing whatever you do. I make up placebo belief catalysts or rituals all the time on the moment as things just like, okay, here's something. This just came together. So I've got these magnets under here, right? These massive magnets, and I've got gold, silver, and palladium. I've got some other crystals and stuff I put in there. I've got a copper, 1 ounce copper um, coin on there. This is shungite.
Hmm.
Right? And here's got a sacred geometry overlay, and then just the natural whole Fibonacci thing from the shell. I got this literally sitting underneath the computer right now.
Uh-huh.
But it's something I made just a while ago but as I was doing it, it was super exciting to me, like to be creating it because
Sure.
not just like it looks cool, but I understand the energy of it and I can feel the energies I'm making by putting it together and putting my intentions
Right.
into it. Like it's wonderful. It's like childlike wonder and awe and joy and excitement to do whatever it is you're doing that it could seem weird or crazy. Like, why the hell am I
Sure.
doing that? Like to me, that has I could go on for like half an hour about all the energetic dynamics of what that is to me and what I feel
Hmm.
it is actually doing in my environment and whatever. But it's
Yeah.
also something I just really giddy and childlike made in a moment and just like, oh, awesome, set it and go on with my day. But doing that stuff all throughout the day, like in my own uh, being aware of anything or perceiving anything.
Sure. Yeah. Would you say that you try your best to find as many opportunities as possible to be in that space then?
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I definitely think inside of that kind of passionate space, we accomplish more than we can accomplish if we're not in that space. I don't think we can get maximum functionality out of ourselves unless we bring that passion. That's what I always refer
Right.
to it, at least as passion. Like your heart's in it. You really want to do it. It's not just like this needs to get done. I'm going to take care of it and I'm a responsible individual. But it's like I really actually really want to do this.
Right. Well, it's like because I think sometimes people think they to the extreme of like well, you can't just have that all the time. You can't just be passionate and excited about what you're doing all day every day. You can never get anything done or whatever. It's like, no, actually you'll get more done than you've ever thought you'd get done. Now, would you get your normal job done that you hate? Probably not, but you probably get a lot of things done. And maybe it's
Sure.
time to change jobs or find money from being passionate about the things you enjoy doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always kind of like not really understood that. Like people have a job and they say, "Oh, well, I can't quit my job. I need the money." It's like, I
Right.
mean, well, you need the money. This isn't the only fucking job on the planet that you can get money from. You know that, right? Like there's other stuff you could do. Maybe you wouldn't hate that. You
Right.
know? I just don't understand what the mindset is of that. That like that whatever job they're in, that's the job specifically that they have to stay at.
I
Yeah.
think part of it's what is it? The shitty situation you do know is better than the potentially even worse shitty situation you might be going into,
Yeah, I
or
mean,
whatever.
potentially even worse. Like, what are you, some kind of quantum computer? You crunching Schrodinger equations all the time, figuring out what the highest probability movement into the gigantic quantum future is? Like, what do you
Yeah,
mean? The potential shitty situation is if 5 seconds from now the Yellowstone super caldera explodes and we're all fucking vaporized, or like a comet comes ripping through the planet. Like that's the
yeah, no
potential
doubt.
worst case scenario. I don't care what you're doing with your life. That's going to affect you just
Yeah, yeah,
slightly,
yeah.
though. But like just a small effect in your life. But
Well, think about it.
I just don't understand.
Think about with belief systems and neural pathways too. So the more that you convince yourself, oh, I got to stay at this job till I earn X amount of money or till whatever, the more you believe that, the more you're ingraining those neural pathways. So you're going to keep creating that reality. That then it becomes hard to just take that leap at some point. Instead of if you live your life more fluidically, having gratitude for the job that you're at while you're there, enjoying it, being a good employee, maximizing your ability to do that job well while you're enjoying it and learning shit and whatever. And when that joy
Sure.
leaves, then open your heart up to leave the job also. So you never get in a place where you spend years literally
Right.
graining neural pathways that, well, this is just the way it is.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's. I mean, do we do we do that with other things besides just like our work? Like what else do we do that with? I mean, do we do that with just because this is just a psychology thing in the long run, right?
For
Like you
sure.
choose to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
the same monotonous thing over and over because you're just like, whoa, can't try and do the next thing. Like
Right.
so we do this everywhere, right? I mean, we started this whole thing talking about like astral energies and things like this. Are there responses to astral energies that we do the same thing all the time because that fear response that we say is, oh, the energy is oppressive, or I'm feeling disempowered, or I'm feeling like it's like sucking the life out of me, or whatever, is maybe that response a fear response that we're actuating just because we feel more comfortable with that than the potential reality that could lay on the other side of going like, oh, actually this is just like more energy that I need to incorporate to my life. It's more things for me to understand. It's a novel energy.
Yeah, totally.
So
Totally.
I think we need to look out for that then. You know, so like
Yeah.
we started talking about astral energies and stuff. What do you have daily practices that you keep, that you feel like you keep your, just for, to keep it kind of simplified, that you keep your space secure with, or if you're
Yeah.
feeling overwhelmed by energies, like top 3 list of things you do if you're feeling overwhelmed by energy, go.
Um, so getting my feet on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
right? Actual feet on the ground or in water or something to literally ground out and to neutralize my cerebral spinal fluid and actual electrical system inside of my body.
Okay, and how do you do that? Before we skip on to the next one, that was a very intellectual answer. What does that mean? Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, because I'm really actually only like
Okay.
6.
All
So,
right, so get your feet on, so you get your physical feet on the physical ground.
okay,
But
physical
no,
feet
no,
on the physical ground, very important. Okay, then
yeah,
don't put your
no,
physical feet on, or your non-physical feet on the physical ground, or vice
yeah.
versa. Okay,
But I think so. I know people can do it through meditation too. You can ground out. You can visualize grounding. I do all that stuff too. But I mean, when with like my body really is a place very
mm-hmm.
anxious. Like it's more than just it's. I can't just do meditate this way or whatever. Knowing that I
Sure.
can go do like a float tank session. Those also are massively healing and centering and like
Okay, let's chill
all.
on the first
But
one though. Like grounding. How do you do it?
yeah.
How do you personally
Okay.
do it?
So when I go outside and get in the sun, part of it is looking at sun gazing, right? So looking at the sun now during the day, everybody's at different levels with this. I do believe that we have the ability to stare into the sun with our eyes open, and it only heals and feeds our neurological system and all the cellular parts of our body. But I
How
don't.
long have you been doing this, and why are you not blind yet?
Okay, so no, I don't do it with my eyes open, right? I do it with my eyes closed. That's what I'm saying. The goal is I believe that to be like the place we'll get to. I know people who do this with their eyes open, it doesn't hurt, it just doesn't hurt their eyes. It's not like they do it for hours, but when they go out and like it's like soaking up the sun, drinking some water, you're drinking the sun, you're connecting with your
Sure.
eyes closed, you're connecting that to into the photonic light, into your neurology, and especially if you can cross your eyes while your eyes are closed. There's things you can do that literally sends more light to different
Okay,
parts
so
of your energetic system.
you gotta help me out here for a second. So when we talk about grounding, most people talk about things that are going into the ground,
Yes.
and you look at the sun. How does that work?
Okay. So starts with the sun, but it's a cycle. So if it's the
Okay.
father, the son, the mother, the earth, and I'm the son of man, the son of the earth, the son of the two, it's a cycle, right? The three
Okay.
Dantians, it's the Trinity, but within us and
So you
within
gotta
being oneness.
connect to the sun first. Well, not
Well, okay,
necessarily first, but you gotta get connected
yeah,
to the sun.
just whatever. Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess technically you
So
said you have to
connecting.
have your physical feet on the physical ground first.
Yeah, this is extreme situations, right? Because I don't always have to have my feet on the ground. I'll just be outside. That's fine. Shoes on,
Sure.
fine. But I like to whenever I
Okay.
can, because it's not often you get your feet on the grass on the ground. That makes things more physiologically easier. Okay, so taking in the sun and then also being in the ground, it'll happen naturally if your feet are on the ground, but also with intention and meditation, cycling that energy, so being able to contract your, I think in yoga, it's the bindis or your perineum and the different places and actually cycle your cerebral spinal fluid and your bioelectric and your creation energy, sexual energy, all that stuff, literally cycling in your system. And then you're
And
doing
if
that
anybody
down.
wants to understand that last sentence, just go like study stuff for like 12 years. So.
We will do a show like just on that or whatever. We can get into some of those dynamics. Um,
Sure. Maybe next time, if you're interested in hearing any more or making any sense out of the sentence that he just said, let us know in the comments, and we'll do a whole episode on one of those words.
really, was it that bad?
It's a lot of words. I mean, like I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't think probably a normal person would have caught all of them. You know. So, but what we're
All
really
right.
saying here is that you want to connect yourself with kind of your lower, and you want to connect yourself with your upper, and you want to cycle that energy with intention through those spaces. Right? And we're not dumping it out somewhere. We're actually like cycling it. Do you pull it from the top? You bring it down. Do you pull it from the bottom? You bring it up. Do you do both? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, totally. So I think, okay, so setting the frameworks, try to use less words here, more general, because what you did was really good. Um, the framework we just said in those spaces, then it's like do whatever you want, man. Do what you feel is right for you. They always morph and meditate. So like putting those frameworks in place is kind of the daily dynamics or daily things, but then from within that space, anything happen. Who knows, man? Stuff comes out of nowhere, like just all sorts of stuff, positive or just whatever.
Sure.
So it's the
Do you
frameworks that are
when
different.
you're dealing with energy, do you bother delineating between positive and negative energies?
Delineating, just being aware and sifting through, totally. I mean, but I don't classify it as positive
The
or
way
negative.
that
It's more
you,
just
I guess what I'm really asking is the way that you deal with an energy, is it functionally different for positive influences versus negative influences, or is it the same for both?
the look. If I can have a dialogue with any kind of energy, dialogue even just in feeling and energy and movement in the
Sure.
environment, whatever, right? Or
Okay.
actual dialogue, telepathic or internal dialogue. If they respect my space and like we can talk and whatever that means,
Mm-hmm.
if they're willing to negotiate and have some basic levels of, if you want to call it, energetic decorum, right,
Sure.
or whatever, like,
Civility.
yeah, some civility, then cool, man. Then it's like eating anybody else who's engaging you. Then there's whatever dialogue it is. So not all things are just bad or good. Like, that's 1% and 1%. 98% of the universe is pretty gray, somewhere in
Sure.
between. And there's lots of things that we don't understand what we're looking into. And if we just immediately, oh, it's
Sure.
bad because like so holding that sacred neutral space, if you will, to
Mm-hmm.
engage and discover and ask questions and just why wouldn't we? They're in our environment. They're in our
And
awareness. Why wouldn't
in
we?
in a certain way, the energy cycling that you're talking about is about kind of bringing everything to a neutral, right? Like we're connecting to the above, we're connecting to the below, we're cycling it through all of that to kind of try and balance the energies throughout the entirety of the system, right? That's kind of the
Right.
goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So finding your
Because
internal
I've personally
coherence.
experienced like issues anytime I'm at like any specific one too much. If I'm too much
Yeah.
about my materialistic reality, maybe a problem. Too much about my psychological reality, too much of a problem too. And I find it the same with moving the energy around too. That we want to equalize ourselves. It always seems to be about equalizing in order to maximize.
Yeah. Or balancing or bringing coherence, right? You talked about before.
Sure. Yeah.
So like,
And actually, real quick, I want to go back to a comment that was there earlier where it was said that people focus more on their insecurities rather than focusing on what makes them happy, but most don't know what makes them happy. And I think actually in an interesting way, this still kind of correlates there that like we probably, if we're not really balancing the energies properly, are we actually focusing properly, or might just like what we think that we need and the way that we think we need to go about it be kind of a further overindulgence with a certain format of ourselves.
yeah, that makes sense.
So, do you think that it like how does a person figure out what makes them happy if they don't know what makes them happy?
So it's interesting. Teal Swan said, I think, I mean, she may not have been the first one to say it, but she's the one that stuck out with me a few years ago, that you can't feel something you've never felt before.
Sure. Yeah, I
So,
like this saying.
yeah, so you can't, if you don't know, you got to go try shit, man. You got to meet new people. You got to think new
Sure.
thoughts, watch different shows, go hang out with different people, like go do things, and you'll find places inside of you that you find deep childlike joy, happiness, wonder, and follow those paths.
Sure. Yeah, I think this comes back to earlier we were talking about people's kind of like a well, lack of engagement with the unknown or the novel, how they're sometimes afraid of that,
Yeah.
or they sometimes want to avoid it. I think a lot of times this leads to a situation where, since they haven't tried new things and they kind of opted for whatever we can call them creature comforts that they've established inside of their life, they oftentimes think like, well, I don't really know what makes me happy anymore. It's like, well, I mean, the shit that used to make you happy is now normalized, and that stuff's all just like your standard day-to-day life, and you never added any new shit, so nothing makes you happy now, basically.
Hmm.
You just gotta add some new shit.
Yeah, and it's like, well, okay, I'll go buy more things. It's like, well, okay, but that's fine. But have you
Well,
done
maybe
that before?
not.
Did that
Maybe
make you
not always
happy?
just buy more things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's really how you it's really how you spend money, right? So I mean, are you investing in a new toy that'll make you happy for a while, whatever that means to you, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for something that's going to create or give you a tool to find your own happiness again at different times, like there's so many things to invest in, right? All sorts of different. I mean, we're finally in the age, I guess you got people like you and me, even, let alone dozens, hundreds, thousands of other people within local groups and stuff that are offering services and materials and teachings and things that can really get your own motor started going for your own self cycling and
Sure.
finding your own joy.
Sure. And I mean, you talk about local groups, and I mean, like, we're on a podcast right now. You have YouTube channels, like, I mean, in the comments below, like, drop things that make you happy. And, like, if other people are psyched on that stuff or new stuff that you want to look into, you never know. There might be somebody that already knows everything about it, or they all kinds of stuff. You get massive improvement like that. Like, utilize, like,
Right.
this is one thing that I see that it's weird. Like, so many people, like, sit there and scroll social media, but oddly, people aren't actually that social on social media, you know?
Mm.
Like, even when
Yeah,
they
yeah,
comment on shit, it's like some emoticons or whatever, or like
yeah, yeah.
whatever they drop, just like their opinion. The engagement and the interaction that actually takes place inside of social media on standard is very, very low. And I think it's actually kind of ridiculous because through the internet just alone, so many opportunities to try new things through social media, so many opportunities to meet new people that are interested in literally whatever you want to be interested in. I don't care if you
Right,
like, like putting cats on top of buckets and wearing them as hats. There's probably a group for it. It's like, it's
right.
so weird. There's something for everything, but we like reserve ourselves to basically pretending that we can't find anybody who likes the thing that we're interested in, or that we don't know anyone, or we can't try new things because we don't know anyone, don't know where to go. Like, all the information's right out there, and probably a whole bunch of people who do it not too far from you. So, like,
Right.
it, I feel like when people don't really know what makes them happy, like, if I'm going to be blunt about it, I feel like they just haven't really looked. Like,
Yeah. Well,
I
sometimes
mean,
they,
go,
they need the
like you said
permission
before,
to
go
go
try
look.
shit. Go try shit.
Right. Right.
Do other
That's
stuff.
and Jordan Peterson talks about it. That psychologist, practicing psychologist and professor, I think, too, of psychology. Um, but when you put yourself in new environments and stimulate new thought process, new thought patterns, or having to process new information because of a
Hmm.
new environment or new activity, then you're literally causing epigenetic expression activation in your DNA. You're turning on literally you just by
Hmm.
trying things.
Sure.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, that
people
makes
don't know that.
sense. How
Yeah.
else are you gonna find out like who you are? If you're sitting there, like, I've always thought it was funny, like, there's all these kinds of like meditation, like transcendental
Hmm.
meditation. A lot of people got into that really dramatically at one point in time in kind of like my sphere. And I saw like a lot of these people were taking on a meditative practice of sitting there and asking themselves who they were, but then they did the same exact thing every day in their real life. It's like, what, you're not actually exploring to find who you are. You're just like, you're doing, I mean, I get it for like, getting outside of yourself, transcendental meditation kind of thing. But isn't
Yeah,
it
yeah.
kind of weird to like ask yourself the question in meditation every night, who am I? And then do the same thing every day and have no idea who you really are?
Right. Is that so? Is that what? So you're saying that's transcendental meditation? They teach that?
If you wanted like really really simplified transcendental meditation where there's all kinds of nuance you could bring into it like any other thing,
Yeah,
what are you transcending, right? We all know what meditation is. That's like sitting
yeah, yeah,
down and doing something with your thoughts or your mind space.
yeah, yeah.
What are we transcending? The whole concept of transcendental meditation is to constantly transcend like whatever the identity was. So right now I'm Zach sitting in a chair, but like I know that because I'm something more than that. So what am I really? You know?
Yeah.
And then, so that thing, you'll come to find that you progressively always can recognize that you're observing the thing. So what are you that's observing the thing that you're observing? Right? Because you're
Right.
always able to make an observation about your space. Transcendental meditation challenges a person to just continually push their mind to do that in an attempt to basically expand their awareness of themselves. There's a whole lot of other formats of these that are just like more illogical, but the
Yeah, yeah.
simplest form is literally just continually asking, like, what am I? No, what am I really? No, what am I really? No, what am I really? You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and really just done like that simple for a long enough time, if nothing else, you'll get like the Zen koan benefit out of it, which is
Hmm.
just like that you'll get so frustrated with trying to figure out what the hell you are. Like maybe you'll have that moment of clarity where you're like, oh shit, I get it. You know, like that's what a Zen koan's
Right.
for, anyways. Like, the tree fell in the forest. Is anyone around to hear it? Like, did it make a sound? You're not supposed to answer this question. You're supposed to get very frustrated with the fact that the Zen master keeps on coming over and hitting you in the head with a stick when you say that you have the answer.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So
Interesting.
anyways, so I wanted to get back to we were trying to make a list. Like, what are things, actionable things that somebody can actually do? We talked about the grounding and kind of took a spin on that with connecting to the sun as well. When you feel that you do have a lot of energy in your space, whether it feels oppressive or not, like, what do you do in the moment to make sure that you're still making a good choice for yourself?
Example?
Well, I mean, like, if you were to ask me the exact same question, I would have like I probably would go first and foremost with it. Like, I take a moment to breathe, right? Like, I give myself a second to actually, like, okay, if I'm like in the ocean, I'm getting thrashed around by the waves, and I constantly keep kicking and flailing all of my limbs. I don't really know which direction I'm getting turned around. But if I stop doing all of that, then I'm at least minimizing the movement to whatever the ocean is doing to me, and that gives me some chance of kind of like finding a center. So if I ever feel
Yeah,
like I'm getting kind of tossed around in any way, or that there's a lot of energy, or there's an oppressive energy, or the energy feels bad, or I mean, sometimes I even with the energy feels good, you know.
right,
Still,
right.
even then, I give myself basically through breath a moment to make sure that I know what the center is, so that
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not like, so that I can start making the right choice to move forward with that. So primarily for me, it's literally like just in my head, it's like breathe, you know. Oh
yeah, yeah,
shit, it's crazy. Oh, breathe, and then I
yeah,
actually consciously take a breath, and kind
yeah,
of not through purpose, but rather through function. That gives me a moment where like I'm not thrashing around. So I get
yeah,
to have a
totally.
look at it. And it's
So
real accessible.
yeah, so same thing. So it's breathing for me for sure. Especially if I can. So yeah, the first thing breathing. And then I do breathing through the nose because 35 things happen in your body when you breathe in through your nose that don't happen when you breathe in through your mouth. Tongue it through your mouth because it completes the actual circuit in your body. And then
35
deep.
things happen when you breathe in through your nose that don't happen when breathe in through your mouth. That's a thing.
Yep. Yeah, you Google it. Yeah, there's a couple talks on it, TED talks and stuff. Um. Uh. And then shit. What was I saying before that? Oh, and then deep diaphragmatic breathing, right? So being able to actually push your diaphragm down and fill up your lower lungs and then your upper lungs and all of it, and then breathing it out through the mouth or whatever. There's a lot of techniques with that, but the physiological aspects, I try to fill up as much oxygen as possible, and then also exhaling while making a sound until you can't make a sound anymore, until because it gets to the lower gases out of the bottom of the lungs and taking another big breath in, and just that, like you said, like it's an action or an action taken that helps to reset the physiological vessel. And in the meantime, your mind is obviously active and aware. So then, what are you focusing on? Sometimes you can just focus on your breath. It helps put whatever else is stressing you out aside for just a second, so you can center and bring that to your body.
Hmm.
And then, I'm trying to think, what was a third one? We're gonna talk about a third one or something, right?
Well,
Uh,
that earlier I was making a three-part list, but we then had one thing that you could do really that you was like a daily, you could say as a daily practice, like kind of
yeah, yeah,
but it sounded for you like it's kind of more a connection you keep all the time. You try to kind of keep a connection with the idea of the sun and the idea of being
yeah.
connected with the earth, or you could call it above and below or whatever all the
Right.
time.
So it's almost, yeah, because I would say it's like gotten to a point where it's never present connection. I'm never not connected to the earth and the sun. Now it's a bonus and it adds additional layers of alignment and cleansing when I actually get in the sun and different dynamics. But that
Hmm.
connection has just been over years more and more ever present. It's just I'm here, I'm on earth, I'm a son of Mother Earth and Father Son, whatever that means, metaphorically, energetically, and in my own vessel
Sure,
in the system, archetypally.
sure.
And so, and I'm in this body and quantum physics and all these dynamics and hermeneutics or hermetics, like all this stuff. It's I create my reality. So, what reality do I want to sit in internally every day? Do I want to deal with my issues so I'm not sitting in any way, shape, or form in bitterness or jealousy or rage or sadness or depression? And when I
That
do,
doesn't
to
sound
honor
fun.
the
Sitting in
right,
those places.
not sitting in them, right, but to be able to acknowledge them, honor them for the valid feelings that they are for whatever reason, work through those energies or those cycles and whatever. And there's millions of nuanced ways, but just
Hmm.
being intentional to address them, to feel them, allow them. I really do believe in a saying, I allow everything, I feel everything until it no longer needs to be felt.
Hmm.
So being fully present with
Hmm.
it. And if it's not gonna, and I guess the
How do you
concern might
know
be
when it
like,
no longer needs to be felt?
right. And so sometimes I think through somatic release, sometimes through just awareness. I think sometimes even making that. So I've done that. I've made that declaration to parts of myself, my own internal dissociated parts or traumatized parts or fractals or things over life that get separated from a coherent one singular self. Um, but making that, coming up, envisioning myself, right, coming up to that version of me, whatever age or whatever dynamic, and making that offer to them to be able to like come integrate in a sense and allow you to feel in my body because it's yours too, everything that you need to feel because you deserve to feel like you felt that way and you got literally dissociated. So
Hmm.
honoring that part of myself to come literally, I'm choosing to submit to potentially shitty feelings because this part of me needs to feel that way. It needs to be okay to feel that way and then move it on.
Sure. Yeah. It's in case so everybody knows, like when you say somatic release, what do you mean? Some
Um,
people do not know what this word means.
yeah. So I actually have to look up the definition again specifically, but it refers
Let's
it in
get the
general.
specific definition, like because I'm literally sitting in the same place as you. It's a word that I use,
Yeah,
but I don't actually know what it means. So somatic means relating to the body, especially as distinct from the mind. So you're saying that there's actually like a bodily release, like
cool. Yeah,
an actually bodily response.
yeah. That definition just made it so much better. That's great. Um, so yeah, so I know even yoga positions, certain things where people can just start crying, right? They're connected with their
Hmm.
heart or whatever that, not even any
Yeah.
visualization. It's just a physical action, yoga positions and but anyway, but yeah, with
Yeah, I wrote an Instagram post earlier today where I was like really connecting with my inner child, and like all of a sudden in the middle of it, I just started crying and shit. Like it was
yeah,
so weird.
right.
Like it was so like it didn't even like it wasn't like getting emotional, and then it let up. It was just like I'm crying. Like what happened right now?
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, see that? Okay, so yeah, that's interesting because that's like psychosomatic release, maybe, because your mind's
You
involved.
calling me a psycho, man?
A little bit. We're all psycho. It's the only way to live. Um, because so like I had a really cool experience. Let's see, not this past December, but the December before. And I was writing a birthday card to my mom, and this is tying in from the somatic dynamic, but it's also just a cool story. And I was just thanking her, for being my mom, that, just whatever, started getting into it. And I started writing and remembering as I was writing, the memories were coming back to me of being in the womb and of
Hmm.
feeling that there was, I remember feeling in the womb, like regretting being here because I could feel the energetic reality around me, not just my parents, like where the world is at, all of it, right? Like I'm not like people do not understand how much babies can understand, right?
Sure.
Because it's the womb that will wipe the memories in a lot of ways. There's a lot of I think we can tap back in through conscious awareness and engagement with our own focus awareness meditations into wombs and the memories in the womb that we can actually have them. Now, how do you know if it's a memory? Because I always wanted to know before this thing happened to me. Um, like, how can you tell if it's a memory and not just a thought that feels really like legitimate? You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
it's probable. And until this experience, I wouldn't have known because I've heard other people share memories from wombs or do things, but they didn't really explain internally how they differentiate. And so for me, I remember as I was writing this, it was different than normally when I have a thought. A lot of times I feel it coming from somewhere, right? Um, but when this memory came up, I literally felt my heart get warm, like in my chest. My whole chest warmed up, and it moved up into my mind, and I began to write it out. But it wasn't like
Oh wow.
channeling. It was just like remembering a memory and writing it
Hmm.
down. But I literally felt it come from my heart and up to my mind. And so I was writing out. That I was ready to like miscarriage myself. Like I can't do this. I can't do this again. This is just the traumas I knew. Like even the one sharing, this is works synchronistically because the experience I shared earlier, the birth trauma. Like I knew in
Yeah.
a lot of ways that kind of thing was coming.
Mm.
Um, but then in that moment though, I felt this incredible love from my mother's heart just enwrap my heart as a baby, and I knew that if someone could love me like that I'd be okay. You know. And so I wrote that down for my mom. like this is, I remember this, my mom, I explained it to her too. And so she, at the very least thinks it's very poetic and beautiful, but I think she believes that I remember it, it's just not, I don't think a
Hmm.
lot of people have experiences like that of remembering things from in the womb, but
Yeah,
I
no,
was,
I don't
as I
think a
was
lot of
writing that
people do.
out, yeah, as I was writing that out, I was crying and like, it was so beautiful to me, like childlike and just beautiful. Cause I've been wanting to remember memories from the womb for a while. I'd done a lot of meditations and things, hadn't necessarily had memories, but I put it into my vortex, if you will, and then it came around in this synchronistic moment as I'm pouring out my heart to my mom. Shit, this memory comes up. It's
Sure.
beautiful.
You used the verbiage, put it into my vortex. We've talked about that's it, like dealing with energy and stuff, but you say put it into my vortex. I assume you're insinuating some way of attracting something to you. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so like, okay, we were talking about earlier too, like different paradigms and archetypes and how many should you have, and it's different for everybody. And the nice thing about knowing, like, I think the vort to put in the vortex paradigm is Abraham Hicks, or at least one of the most popular uses of it. And I've never really used that terminology a lot. It's just recently in the last few weeks or something, it it's just been relevant and it fits. And it fits
Mm-hmm.
for what I'm doing consciously or engaging. So putting in the vortex is setting your intentions. It's what you focus on. It's if your feelings are the prayer, your feelings are the loose generator, the energy generator for um well actually I guess we can put it this way too. Joe Dispenza says that thoughts are electric and they go out, right? That feelings are magnetic, they pull in. So it's one thing to think we want positive things and to put them on a list and do all this stuff. But if you do a vision board or whatever, the point is you want the vision board, who cares what words are on their images, you need to, when you see it, feel inside of you what you
Mm-hmm.
want from those things, right? It's not just about the
Yeah.
magic of the words, because that
Yeah.
can work, but that takes a whole lot longer. Like, I think with hypnagogic states, you can get there 100 times faster because you're allowing that the words to actually mesh into your subconscious and the feeling and sensation in your body. And a lot of the good guided visualization stuff will do it in that way, that you feel what's being visualized
Yeah.
in a way that causes a feeling inside of you, because the feeling is actually what magnetizes your reality. So anytime that, like me and Frank were talking about, he's coming out here to do fire and some ayahuasca ceremonies and stuff sometime coming up here soon. And we're getting really excited about it, tuning into the dynamics him and I are going to have around the fire. He's grown up in the Bronx, so he's never been around fires, right? And I've been around a lot of them, especially this last year. And I'm a fire sign,
Mm-hmm.
and like interdimensionally understanding dynamics that I know I just would have visions and awarenesses of when he's there and we're there together, how it's going to go, right? And just
Cool.
awesome. So we're talking about that, and like he's thinking about his schedule, and it feels right, and so we're getting excited about it. So as we're coming to a culmination point of like climaxing on just the excitement about it, we just even constantly engaged. Go, all right, bam, put that shit in the vortex. All that feeling, all that excitement, creating that reality. Throw it into our vortex, or our personal vortexes of the potential quantum realities that could anchor into the days
So
ahead.
functionally, anything that we're kind of feeling that we want in the future, that's what putting it in the vortex is to you.
Yeah, I think at the base level, the feelings are the engine. And so whatever thoughts or metaphors or visualizations you have to get you to the feeling signature in the body, I think, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think that's really what it's all about. That's why the words don't matter. That's why having the right words, the right metaphors for the right people, for what? To make them feel something in their body. And you can't feel something you've
Mm-hmm.
never felt before. So if you can use words and images and metaphors for someone in their own body to go along a story, to then
Yeah.
feel some form of excitement or joy or like healing through the story you told. They feel it in their body because you told them a story.
Sure.
Amazing.
Yeah, Terrence McKenna used to say there's no replacement for direct experience, and maybe that's exactly why. Like without the direct experience, you can't really have the feeling, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
So, um, so we should keep this underneath 2 hours. We could sit here and talk about things all night, but so
yeah.
like to ensure that we like astral the energies that are around right now that people might be having a difficult time with. Maybe they came here to hear specifically about that. And what would you say to them to deal with the energies they feel right now, whatever it is that they are feeling?
um, all right, so no matter what we're practicing or what we're doing or what's going on in the world around us, like you gotta find ways to come into self, whatever that means to you, right? Because no matter what, no matter if you're married, you're in a family, you have kids, You know, every night when you lay down to go to sleep, even if a kid's sleeping on you, you're alone in your own mind. It's all you. Well, unless you're
Mm-hmm.
connected interdimensionally, telepathically, and whatever. But at a core level, it's still you. It's your own. It's you by you. So like one of my favorite things to do on entheogens, mushrooms, or other dynamics is looking in the mirror. Right? To me, it's beautiful to see the shifting and the melting because I allow my psyche to make whatever connections it needs to make. But what I see is me, right? I see
Mm-hmm.
layers of me, waves of me. Sometimes I see other things at different times, but a lot of it's me and seeing an appreciation for me, this body, this incarnation, whether it's the
Mm-hmm.
only one I've ever had because I couldn't prove I've had other lives, right? Or if it's, one of many, many, millions.
Sure.
But being able to fall in love with this one and the soul that's inside of me, but also me, like the little self, the little personality, Aaron Michael Kessler, right? And the way he is and the things he likes and the shows he likes or the thing, the things that just matter because of how I grew up and they seem to bring me joy and excitement and happiness and just loving who I am as a person and even with the flaws and whatever, really finding joy in who I am as we're all growing and learning. So I think to me, no matter what's going on in the world, anytime, like we can increase that at a base level. If we have
Mm-hmm.
that joy and really do enjoy ourselves, we can look in the mirror and smile, like
Sure.
you're good. I don't think much in life's going to get you down, really. I think it's pretty simple.
Sure. I mean, but what would you say to someone that feels like, right now their life is down? You know, how
Right,
do
right.
you think they can look in the mirror and come to themselves as well? And if so, how do they do that?
um, yeah, good question. Okay, so because there's just so many, it's infinitely nuanced. So trying new things, we were talking about earlier, right? Trying new things. Try looking in the mirror. Trying saying things in the mirror. Like I've gotten beyond. I guess I could see how some people still would think it's ridiculous to look in the mirror and say things to yourself in the mirror. Like I just kind of got over that a
Sure.
long time ago. But so part of it's getting over the things that you feel are awkward. The more
Mm-hmm.
you can do things, new things, and then and that's normal. Things are awkward at
Mm-hmm.
first, but the more you do them, they become less awkward. So now I do it without thinking. And it could be seen as like narcissistic, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not. It's done from a very pure place of like loving myself or honoring myself. I don't do it every day. It's not like a ritual, but when I do that, when I stop in the mirror, I try to engage myself in the mirror every time I see a mirror. So
Totally.
little habits are like I think another one posted notes on door frames. So every time you walk through a door frame, reminding you to take a breath, stand up straight, and just center yourself before you walk through a door, which is a great way to present yourself in any room you walk into and whatever. But it's a good reminder. So like a lot of the little practices. So even if people are feeling really down, it's where sometimes you do the actions until the feelings follow,
Mm-hmm.
not just because it feels good. Sometimes if you know that doing these practices will bring you physically feeling better, then you have to find a way to engage our ego and coax our ego into doing the things practically we need to do because we know it'll bring us to an emotional place or trying to commit to certain things as we're discovering what will do that for us.
Certainly. Yeah. So the is there anything that you like purposely say to yourself when you do like the mirror looking process, or is it more of just kind of like a gazing thing and allowing whatever comes up to come up?
Okay, let me see if I can pull this up on here actually, since
Yeah,
we've got it.
Joe says that the best way to do it is just mushrooms, which is also true in some cases.
I'm going to pull up a picture real quick to answer your question. Why don't you give an example of that? Mushrooms being good in some cases or for looking in the mirror.
Well, even I mean, functionally, all of the studies that have gone towards mushrooms right now show that they're working very good for resetting our brain chemistry and allowing ourselves to feel things that we haven't felt before, and allowing us. I mean, because the evidence of the experimentation is endless at this point in time. From my own personal experience with mushrooms, I've certainly had psychedelic mushrooms, and especially large dosages. Definitely a large array of emotional experiences, especially as it pertains to unwinding my own psychology through basically a visual metaphor that like I always end up in like large dose. I'm laying somewhere with my eyes closed. Like that ends up regardless of what I was telling myself I was gonna do. So laying there with my eyes closed, I definitely have had a lot of visual dreamlike almost experiences a lot of the times. where just having symbolic projections of the way that I approach a certain kind of situation, but the way that it plays out is not like the way that I normally approach it, and it allows me to feel a feeling that is generated by going through a situation that I have gone through many times before in a way that I have never gone through it, which definitely I have found for me, like again when we talked earlier about having more perspectives, better, more emotional perspectives that I feel like I have memory of going through any
Mm-hmm.
situation, the easier I feel it is to basically stay objective on that situation. So like the first time that I broke up with a girl, I like thought it was supposed to be very traumatic. It was all these things. It went very much so like that. Then as I got older, I had separations where I knew that I didn't want to do that to myself. I ended up getting memories of relationships where when it split off, it actually did become more of like a friendly thing, and it was like, okay, I understand why you want to go that way, or I want to go this way. And now like that's kind of like it's more like the standard in my mind. If it was to be like a really like harsh, psychologically demanding and really rough breakup, like I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. I can't even imagine myself getting in a relationship with somebody that would happen with. But this
Yeah.
really all in many ways comes from going, and this wasn't mushrooms in this case, but it's the same facet playing out that mushrooms can do in like a smaller time frame through a visual experience that you're having
Yeah.
inside of your own psyche, where you, through having a new experience that allows you to feel that place differently, the normalization of what that situation should be like going forward, I think, like kind of broadens or can tune to new places where you just feel like this should feel some other way, or has the potential to feel these other ways. And so I'm going to choose those ways, or a deviation towards those ways, over kind of the habituated ways that I've always had this feel.
Yeah. Totally.
Really long-winded answer, but like, yeah, mushrooms are good for that, but that's also just like, I think what we need to do, period. Why the novel experience plays in, why it's important to try new things, why it's important to try old things new ways. Like, all you're doing is generating novelty. It doesn't actually have to be a new thing. Like, you could go to work at the same place every day and always take a novel path there, and that would probably benefit you more than taking the exact same way all the time, you know. But even if you take the
Right.
exact same way all the time, you could just appreciate the novelty that there's a whole bunch of different shit every single time that you go the same way. You know, what are we
Right.
trying to find here? So, did you had a picture that you were going to bring up?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see if I can pull it up. Let's see. Share screen. There we go. Oh, it automatically shot us over. That's good. All right. So that picture was taken after or while at the tail end of a mushroom experience, looking in the mirror, and I was so happy with myself, like just at peace and at rest, and so I don't know, whatever you pick up from that picture, but I just remember it. Like I just when I look at, I have that. My brother noticed it this weekend. And he just like, thought I was a little narcissistic, whatever. I had that as a lock screen on my phone
Hmm.
because it just like when I see that, it immediately puts me. It reminds me of that place, so it helps me to find resonance with it right now during an average day, even though it was a past experience.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think it's interesting. There's some cultures out there that believe like if you take a picture of them, you're stealing like a little piece of their soul or whatever. And like I don't
Hmm.
necessarily think that it's all that dramatic, but I think definitely you can capture a moment in time through photography. And I think there really is the ability to kind of, well, I've found like from posing for pictures, and then also like I've done a ton of photography myself. The energy that
Hmm.
the person has, that the photograph is being taken of, and like their engagement with and willingness with the camera, and really just like how they feel is really something that's captured in the image in all kinds of these really nuanced ways, or maybe even what somebody might say as an energetic way. So,
Right. No, 100%. Like really. So it's like, I mean, you think about it too. I know there's psychics who do this today, and I say psychics, but some of these are just normal people. This is just the way they understand energy medicine. They would never even use the term psychic.
sure.
But if they have a picture of you, then they can connect to and get the information they need, from the
Sure.
picture. It's like having, I mean, in ancient, times, witchcraft stuff, but it's true today. It's DNA skin suit technology, needing a piece of hair or blood or some fluid or whatever,
Well, I think
which
I feel like it always helps you to find someone if you know what they look like, you know.
totally,
So
yeah.
it's helpful to have a
But
picture of the thing that you're trying to work on.
yeah, well, and I guess imagine the more senses, the more you've had encounters with someone in this life in whatever viscerally sensorial way, the easier it is to tune back into them at any point in the future.
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, which
I
makes
mean,
sense.
the more memories or more energetic fluctuations that we've shared with another person, I think the easier it is to kind of find their same spaces again. When we're interacting in a space, and that space is really having some type of energetic happening, which is an experience we're both sharing, then we
Hmm.
definitely do create some type of, I guess you could call it, an energetic imprint on one another. That it might just be a memory of what their energy was, but it does, or your energy, it can be your own energy if you're looking in the mirror, and you can actually literally like kind of imprint onto a position that you generate a space that isolates itself, really whatever way that you want to isolate it if you're doing the mirror thing, because you can think
Right.
whatever you want about yourself. Like if you hate yourself and you talk a bunch of shit about yourself and you look in the mirror while you do it, it has a bad effect. It really
Yeah,
does.
no doubt.
So
Yeah, so mindset. So I mean, that's yeah, that's interesting too. It's just a lot of mindset, or that the integrative work, I guess you will. So when the entheogen experiences come, they're more beautiful and healing and enjoyable than they are, dealing with traumas or dealing with like, shitty habits that you just refuse to let go to. So that the
absolutely.
more I've had, that's why I've done so many in so many different ways, because it's like building a relationship with them, with the entity, if you will, or the feeling of the physiological feeling of that in your body and how that
Hmm.
it reacts to your psyche and your physiological dynamic. But it develops a relationship, so it's like, yeah, anyway, it's good. It's good stuff.
All right. Well, we are at 1 hour and 56 minutes, and we should cut out of here for the night. Aaron, if you have, like, you can find all of our social media stuff in the contact info below. We will be on here. We do not have a specific time right now, but you should expect to be able to find us on here every night. You can follow the social media. You can find it linked all the time and everything like that. If you have any questions about anything that's talked about in the show, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I will definitely be watching the comments, and we will put any answers in there, or maybe we'll talk about it in a future show. But anybody who came and check us out, we really appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and everything on this. And Aaron, do you have anything that you want to share that right before we go?
Yeah, that's good. So we're trying something new. This is the first episode. Looking to do this just about every night, I think, for the next I don't know, couple weeks. We'll see how that we'll see how that goes, man. So many people want to tune in, just hear us chat about stuff. But yeah, participate in the comments. That's awesome. We've got the thanks Frank Castle. We got the StreamYard thing. He's got that on his. He showed me how to use that dynamic. So we've got that going. There's a way to interact with comments and people, to have conversations. Nothing's off topic, whatever you want to talk about. I mean, obviously we can choose to address your comment or not, but there's nothing really off topic. Just don't be an asshole. And actually, if you do, that means other people, but we can always moderate that too. Anyway, it'll be good
You
times,
can be
man.
an
So
asshole to us, just don't be an asshole to other people. We're fine. We
there we
can take
go.
it just
That's
fine.
that's the rule. Yeah, go ahead and do a test. That actually adds stuff that's fun to play with. So yeah, we'll be back on tomorrow night.
All right, we will see you guys tomorrow night. We do not have a time right now, but you'll just have
We'll
to
post
find
it.
out later.
Sounds good. All right, take care, everybody. Have a good night.
You too. Bye bye.